The galactic trade station Nexus 7 hung in the darkness of space like a jewel made of metal and light, spinning slowly around a dying star that painted everything in shades of orange and gold. And inside its massive corridors walked creatures from dozens of worlds, each one stranger than the last, each one carrying their own dreams and fears and ambitions through the endless maze of trading halls and diplomatic chambers. Daniel Carter had seen strange things in his 36 years of life, but he still found himself staring sometimes at the aliens who passed him by, their bodies shaped by evolution on worlds nothing like Earth, their eyes holding thoughts he could never fully understand. And yet here he was, just another human working security for a small trading company, wearing simple clothes and carrying no visible weapons, looking as ordinary as any man from Kansas could look. Stay close and try not to start any international incidents, Lisa Brennan said with a small smile as she walked beside him, her heels clicking against the metal floor in a rhythm that had become familiar over the past 3 months of working together. When have I ever started an incident? Daniel asked, and Lisa laughed because they both knew the answer was never. Because Daniel was the quietest and most professional security contractor she had ever hired. A man who seemed to fade into the background until you needed him. The central plaza of Nexus 7 spread out before them like a cathedral built for giants, with ceilings so high that clouds actually formed near the top. And in the middle of this vast space stood a creature that made Daniel stop walking. Commander Rex Thorin of the Kelvari Empire was 8 feet tall and built like a nightmare given flesh, with 4 muscular arms covered in scales that shimmered like polished bronze, and a face that seemed designed by nature to inspire terror, with sharp ridges and small burning eyes that swept across the crowd with obvious contempt. He was surrounded by warriors of his own kind, each one nearly as massive as their leader, and before them knelt a trembling alien from a species Daniel did not recognize. Something small and furry with too many legs. This is what passes for a warrior among the Nexali. Rex roared, his voice echoing through the plaza and causing nearby merchants to scatter. I asked for a champion, and they send me a creature that cannot even stand before me without shaking. The Nexali representative tried to speak, but Rex backhanded him with one of his lower arms, sending the small alien tumbling across the floor. And Daniel felt his jaw tighten as he watched. What is happening here? Lisa whispered to a nearby Valeth, one of the tall insectoid beings who served as neutral observers and record keepers. Throughout the galaxy, the Kelvari commander has been challenging representatives of various species to traditional combat. The Valeth answered in its clicking voice. He claims the right of dominance testing under old galactic law, and those who refuse must pay tribute or lose trading rights through Kelvari space. Lisa's face went pale because Kelvari space sat right in the middle of 3 major trade routes, and losing access would cripple their company, humans. Rex suddenly bellowed, and Daniel realized the massive alien was pointing directly at them. I see humans hiding in the crowd like the cowards they are. The plaza went quiet as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward Daniel and Lisa. Come forward, little mammals. Rex continued with a grin that showed rows of sharp teeth. I've heard much about humanity and their supposed strength, but all I see are soft creatures who hide behind their machines and their tricks. Lisa stepped forward with diplomatic grace, her voice steady even though Daniel could see her hands trembling slightly. Commander Rex, the human delegation means no disrespect, but we are traders, not warriors, and we have no quarrel with the Kelvari Empire. No quarrel? Rex laughed and his warriors laughed with him. You exist in our galaxy without proving your worth. You trade in our space without paying tribute, and you claim no quarrel. He stepped closer, and Lisa had to crane her neck to look at his face. I will make this simple for the weak human mind to understand, Rex said slowly. Send me a champion to face me in traditional combat. or your species will be banned from Kelvari space forever. And I will personally ensure that every human I meet learns the cost of cowardice." Daniel watched the scene unfold with the same calm expression he had worn through 3 combat tours in places most people only saw on news reports. Places where death came fast and without warning. Places that made this alien bully seem almost quaint by comparison. There must be another way, Lisa tried again. Perhaps a diplomatic solution or a trade agreement that would satisfy. "I am not interested in your words," Rex roared, slamming one massive foot against the floor hard enough to crack the metal. "I want blood. I want to show this galaxy that the Kelvari are still the greatest warriors in existence. And I want to start by breaking one of you pathetic humans in front of everyone." The silence stretched on, and Daniel could feel the weight of it pressing down on everyone in the plaza. Could see the other humans in the crowd looking away in shame. Could sense the aliens watching with a mixture of pity and contempt for the species that would not even defend its own honor. "I will fight you." The words came out quiet but clear, and it took Daniel a moment to realize they had come from his own mouth. Rex turned to look at him, those small burning eyes narrowing with interest. "You?" the Kelvari commander asked, looking Daniel up and down with obvious amusement. "You are not even a warrior. I can tell by the way you stand, by the softness of your body. I will fight you," Daniel repeated. And this time, he stepped forward so everyone could see him. Just an ordinary-looking man in ordinary clothes. Facing a monster from another world, Rex began to laugh. A deep rumbling sound that shook the air itself. "Very well. Little human," he said when his laughter finally died down. "Tomorrow, in the combat arena, I will show the entire galaxy what happens when humans try to play at being warriors." He turned and walked away with his entourage, still chuckling, and Daniel felt Lisa grab his arm. "Are you insane?" she hissed. "He will kill you." Daniel looked at her with eyes that held something she had never seen before. Something old and patient and utterly without fear. "No," he said simply. "He will not." And somewhere deep inside him, in the place where his training and his instincts lived, Daniel Cotter began to prepare for war. News traveled fast on Nexus 7, faster than light itself it seemed, because within an hour of Daniel's challenge, every being on the station knew that a human had accepted the Kelvari commander's demand for combat, and most of them thought it was the funniest thing they had heard in years. The betting halls filled with creatures eager to wager on the outcome, though calling it a wager was generous when the odds sat at nearly 100 to 1 in favor of Rex. And even those odds only existed because some gamblers hoped to profit from the impossible. "You need to withdraw," Lisa said as she paced back and forth in her small office. Her fingers pressed against her temples like she was fighting off a headache. There must be some way to take it back. Some rule or custom that allows you to apologize and walk away. Daniel sat in a chair by the window, watching ships come and go from the docking bays below. His body relaxed in a way that made no sense given what he had agreed to do. "If I withdraw, humanity loses access to Kelvari space," he said without turning around. "Your company goes bankrupt within a year. Every alien in this galaxy learns that humans can be bullied without consequence. And if you die, then the same things happen. But at least I tried." Lisa stopped pacing and stared at him with a mixture of frustration and fear. "Daniel, I have seen Kelvari warriors in action," she said, her voice dropping low. "They come from a world with barely any gravity, which means they can grow massive without their bodies breaking down. And they have been bred for combat for 10,000 years. They are not like anything you have ever faced." Daniel finally turned to look at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her words catch in her throat. "I survived 3 tours in Afghanistan," he said quietly. "I have been shot twice, stabbed once, and caught in an explosion that killed 4 men standing next to me. I have seen friends die in ways that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. And I have done things that I will never speak about to anyone." He stood up and walked toward her, his movements smooth and controlled in a way she was only now beginning to notice. "That alien out there thinks he knows what a warrior looks like," Daniel continued. "He thinks it is about size and strength and putting on a show for the crowd. But that is not what war is, not for humans. Then what is it?" "Survival," Daniel said simply. "Ending the threat as fast as possible so you can go home to your family. That is what human combat looks like, and Vrex has never seen anything like it." Lisa wanted to argue more, but something in his certainty made her pause. A chime at the door interrupted them, and Lisa opened it to find a Valith standing in the corridor, its compound eyes reflecting the light in strange patterns. "I am Ambassador Selen," the insectoid being said in its clicking voice. "I have been assigned to officiate tomorrow's combat, and I wish to speak with the human challenger before the event." Daniel nodded and gestured for the ambassador to enter. Selen moved with the careful precision of its species, each of its 6 limbs finding exactly the right place to step. And when it settled into a standing position near the window, it seemed to study Daniel with intense curiosity. "I must confess that I do not understand your decision," Selen said. "The Kelvari are among the most formidable warriors in the known galaxy, and you appear to be a fairly standard example of your species, with no obvious advantages in size or natural weapons. That is what everyone keeps telling me," Daniel replied with a small smile. "And yet you do not seem concerned. Should I be?" Selen's mandibles clicked together in what might have been confusion. "Your species is something of a mystery to the Galactic Council," the ambassador admitted. "You emerged from your homeworld only 70 years ago and immediately began expanding with a speed that has made many nervous. Yet your physical specifications suggest nothing remarkable. What do the records say about Earth?" Daniel asked. Selen paused as if accessing some internal database. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld," the ambassador answered, "which places it among the most hostile environments known to produce sapient life. Though this classification has been disputed by some who point out that humans seem too fragile to have evolved in such conditions." Daniel laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise the alien. "Too fragile," he repeated. "Ambassador, on my world, we have creatures that can kill with a single bite. We have weather systems that destroy entire cities. We have diseases that have wiped out millions of my kind throughout our history. And we have spent most of our existence fighting each other with weapons that grew more terrible with each generation." He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "Humans do not look dangerous because we learned to hide it," he continued. "We do not have claws or fangs or armored scales because we did not need them. We had something better. We had brains that could plan and hands that could build and a stubbornness that refused to let us die no matter what the universe threw at us." Selen listened in silence, recording everything for the historical archives. "The Kelvari fight to prove their strength," Daniel said, turning back to face the ambassador. "They make it into a performance, a display of power. But humans do not fight like that. We fight to end things, quickly and completely. Because on our world, hesitation meant death. You believe you can defeat Commander Vrex?" "I know I can." Selen studied the human for a long moment. "You are either the most confident being I have ever met," the ambassador finally said, "or you are suffering from some form of mental dysfunction. Possibly both," Daniel admitted, after Selen left. Lisa sat down heavily in her chair and looked at Daniel with new eyes. "You actually believe everything you said, do you not?" "Every word. And if you are wrong?" Daniel shrugged with the casual acceptance of a man who had made peace with death long ago. "Then you should probably start looking for new trade routes." That night, while Daniel slept peacefully in his quarters, the rest of the station buzzed with excitement and anticipation. And in the Kelvari section of Nexus 7, Commander Vrex Thorn trained before an audience of admirers, crushing metal plates with his bare hands and sparring with multiple opponents at once. Utterly confident that tomorrow would bring him another easy victory, he had no idea what was coming. The combat arena of Nexus 7 had been built centuries ago by a species that no longer existed. Designed to hold 50,000 spectators around a circular fighting floor made of some material harder than steel. And today, every seat was filled with beings who had come to watch a human die. They came from 30 different worlds. Creatures of every shape and size imaginable. Some floating in anti-gravity chairs because the station's atmosphere was not quite right for their biology. Others sealed in environmental suits that hissed and hummed with life support systems. All of them eager to witness what everyone assumed would be a quick and brutal execution. The Kelvari section erupted in cheers as Commander Vrex Thorn entered the arena, his massive form casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the light itself. His forearms raised in triumph, even though the fight had not yet begun. And on each arm, he carried a traditional war axe. Weapons that had been in his family for generations. Blades that had tasted the blood of countless opponents. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed like liquid gold, covering his vital areas while leaving his powerful muscles exposed for all to admire. And as he walked toward the center of the arena, he roared a challenge that shook the walls and made several smaller species cover their ears in pain. "Where's my opponent?" Vrex bellowed with obvious amusement. "Where's the human who thinks he can stand against a Kelvari champion?" A door opened on the opposite side of the arena, and Daniel Carter walked out. The silence that followed was almost comical. A wave of confused disappointment spreading through the crowd as they looked at the small figure crossing the fighting floor. This ordinary man in simple clothes, who carried nothing but a short blade that looked almost like a toy compared to the massive axes wielded by his opponent Lisa, watched from a private viewing box, her hands gripping the railing so hard that her knuckles had turned white, and beside her stood Ambassador Selen, who had requested a position close to the human representative in order to document her reactions. "He is going to die," Lisa whispered. And she hated how true the words felt. "Perhaps," Selen replied. "But I have been reviewing the historical records of human warfare since our conversation yesterday, and I must admit that I am no longer certain of the outcome." "What did you find?" "Enough to make me very uncomfortable in the arena." Daniel walked steadily toward the center where Vrex waited, his eyes taking in every detail of the space around him. The texture of the floor, the position of the lights, the way sound echoed off the walls, all the small things that most people would never notice, but that could mean the difference between life and death. He stopped about 20 feet from Vrex and simply stood there, the knife held loosely at his side, his breathing slow, and even Vrex stared at him with those burning eyes. And for just a moment, something like confusion flickered across his alien features. "That is your weapon?" the Kelvari commander asked, gesturing at the small blade. "You come to face me with a knife that could not even cut through my scales?" "It will be enough," Daniel replied, and his voice carried clearly through the arena's acoustic system. Calm and flat and completely without fear, laughter rippled through the crowd. But some of the older beings, those who had lived long enough to learn that the quiet ones were often the most dangerous, did not join in. Ambassador Selen moved to a platform at the edge of the arena, where a microphone would carry the official words to every corner of the massive space. "This is a sanctioned combat under the traditional laws of the Galactic Council," Selen announced, each word precise and formal. "Commander Vrex Thorn of the Kelvari Empire has issued a challenge of dominance, and Daniel Carter of Earth has accepted. The fight will continue until one combatant yields, is incapacitated, or is killed. There are no other rules." The crowd rumbled with anticipation. "Combatants, are you ready?" "I have been ready my entire life," Rex said with a grin. Daniel simply nodded. Then you may begin. Rex did not move immediately, instead choosing to circle Daniel slowly. His massive form cutting through the air with surprising grace for something so large, and as he moved, he spoke. His voice pitched to carry to every spectator. I want everyone to see this clearly, the Kelvari announced. I want them to understand what happens when a lesser species challenges their betters. I am going to break this human piece by piece, starting with his arms, then his legs. Then I will crush his skull while he screams for mercy. Daniel said nothing, his eyes tracking Rex's movement with an intensity that several observers would later describe as unsettling. Do you have nothing to say, little human? Rex taunted. No final words for your pitiful species? I do not waste words on dead things, Daniel said quietly. Rex's grin faltered for just a moment, something cold passing through his chest that he refused to acknowledge as fear. Because that was impossible, because he was a champion, because he had never lost a fight in his entire life. You dare, Rex growled, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You dare speak to me like that? I thought you wanted a real fight, Daniel replied. And something in his voice had changed, something had shifted behind his eyes. And Lisa recognized it with a chill that ran down her spine. This was not the quiet security contractor she had worked with for 3 months. This was something else entirely. Then come, Rex snarled. Hit me with your pathetic little knife. I will give you the first strike for free. Let us see what humanity is truly capable of. Daniel did not move. I said, come. Rex roared, slamming all 4 axes against the floor in a display of raw power that cracked the impossibly hard surface. Still, Daniel did not move. What is wrong with you? Rex demanded, confusion mixing with rage. Are you frozen with fear? Has your courage finally failed you? Daniel met his gaze and smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression anyone in that arena had ever seen on a human face. I am not frozen, he said softly. I am waiting. Waiting for what? For you to stop talking and actually fight. Rex screamed with fury and charged, and in that moment, the entire galaxy was about to learn what humanity was truly capable of. The first second was a blur of movement that most spectators could not even follow. As 8 feet of Kelvari fury launched itself at Daniel, with all 4 axes raised for a devastating overhead strike that would have split a normal opponent in half. But Daniel was not where the axes fell. He moved to the side with a speed that seemed to violate the laws of physics, his body flowing like water around the attack, and his knife flashed twice in the arena lights. The movements so fast and so precise that they looked almost casual. Blood sprayed from Rex's right side, and his 2 upper arms went limp. The tendons severed with surgical accuracy in places where the scales did not quite cover the joints. The second saw Rex stagger forward from the momentum of his own attack, confusion flooding his brain because he could not understand what had happened, could not process how his arms had simply stopped working. And in that moment of hesitation, Daniel spun behind him with the grace of a dancer. 2 more cuts, just as precise, just as devastating, and Rex's lower arms joined his upper ones in uselessness, the axes clattering to the floor as his fingers lost the ability to grip. The third second lasted forever for everyone watching. As Daniel completed his movement by rising up behind the Kelvari champion and placing his knife against the one spot on Rex's body that every species knew was vulnerable, the base of the skull where the spine met the brain, a single drop of blood ran down. Rex's neck where the blade pressed just hard enough to break the scales, and then everything stopped. The arena was silent in a way that seemed to suck the air out of the room. 50,000 beings holding their breath as they tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Rex stood frozen in the center of the fighting floor, his forearms hanging useless at his sides. A human standing behind him with a knife that could end his life with the slightest push forward. And in that moment, the greatest warrior the Kelvari Empire had produced in 3 generations looked very small indeed. "I could kill you now," Daniel said, and his voice was calm and conversational, as if he was discussing the weather rather than holding another being's life in his hands. "One push and your spine separates from your brain. You would be dead before you hit the ground." Rex tried to speak, but no words came out. "This is how humans fight," Daniel continued. And now he was speaking to the cameras that broadcast this moment to every corner of the galaxy. "We do not make displays. We do not show off. We do not drag things out for entertainment. We end threats as quickly and efficiently as possible because that is how we survived on our world." He let those words sink in for a moment. Earth is not a death world because of its predators or its weather or its diseases. Daniel said, "It is a death world because it created us. Creatures that learned to kill anything that threatened us. Creatures that turned murder into a science. Creatures that could wipe out entire species without even meaning to in the viewing box." Lisa had tears streaming down her face. Though she could not have said whether they were from relief or shock or some emotion, she did not have a name for Ambassador. Selen's mandibles clicked rapidly as it recorded every detail. Already knowing that this footage would change the political landscape of the galaxy forever, "I am not going to kill you," Daniel said to Rex, "because that would be pointless. You are not a threat anymore. And humans do not kill for sport or pride or entertainment." He leaned closer, his mouth next to Rex's ear. "I'm going to let you live so you can tell everyone what happened here today," Daniel whispered. But the microphone still picked it up. "I want you to go back to your empire and explain that you demanded a real fight and got exactly what you asked for. I want you to tell them that the human who defeated you was not special, was not exceptional, was just an ordinary soldier from a planet full of ordinary soldiers who could all do exactly what I just did." Rex finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "I yield." Daniel stepped back and lowered his knife. Kelvari champion collapsed to his knees, blood pooling around him from the wounds that would never fully heal. That would leave his arms weak and unreliable for the rest of his life. And as medical teams rushed onto the arena floor, Daniel simply turned and walked toward the exit. He did not celebrate, did not raise his arms in victory, did not even look at the crowd that was now erupting in a chaos of sounds, some cheering, some screaming, some making noises that humans did not have words for. He just walked away like a man who had finished an unpleasant but necessary task. Lisa met him in the corridor outside, her face pale and her hands still shaking. "How?" she asked, and it was the only word she could manage. "Anatomy," Daniel replied, and there was a tiredness in his voice now that had not been there before. "Every species has weak points, places where the muscles connect and the nerves run close to the surface. Humans have spent thousands of years learning exactly where those points are and how to exploit them. You knew exactly where to cut. I spent all night studying Kelvari biology," Daniel admitted. "Downloaded their medical files from the station database. They never thought to restrict access because they never imagined anyone would use that information against them." Lisa stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. "You planned this from the beginning." "I do not fight fair," Daniel said with a small shrug. "That is how you lose behind them." The arena still buzzed with confusion and fear and the dawning realization that would soon spread across every world that received the broadcast. Humanity was not the weak species. They had assumed humanity was something far more terrifying, and they had just been introduced to what humans were actually capable of. The aftermath of the fight spread through the galaxy like a shockwave, carried on waves of light and data that reached every inhabited world within days. And everywhere the footage played, the reaction was the same. A mixture of disbelief and fear, and a sudden urgent desire to reconsider everything that had been assumed about the species. Called humanity on Nexus 7. The Kelvari delegation went into emergency sessions that lasted through the night cycle, their voices rising in arguments that could be heard through the walls of their quarters, some demanding revenge while others counseled caution. And in the end, it was the footage itself that settled the debate. They watched it again and again, slowing it down to frame by frame, and even then they could barely follow what had happened, could barely comprehend how a creature half the size of their champion had moved with such impossible speed and struck with such devastating precision. Commander Rex Thorne survived his injuries, but his fighting career was over. The nerve damage too extensive for even the most advanced Kelvari medicine to repair. And when he was finally able to speak, he had only one thing to say to the reporters who crowded around his medical bed. "I asked for a real fight," he said. And his voice was hollow with shock that had not faded even days later. I did not understand what that meant. None of us did. The Kelvari Empire quietly withdrew their demands for tribute and their threats against human trade routes. A decision announced with carefully neutral language that fooled no one. And in the corridors of power across the galaxy, other species took note. Ambassador Selen requested a formal meeting with Lisa and Daniel the day after the fight, arriving at their office with two other Valeth, who carried recording equipment and the authority of the Galactic Council. "The footage has been verified and authenticated," Selen said, those compound eyes studying Daniel with new intensity. "It will be entered into the permanent historical record as a significant event in interspecies relations." "I just wanted to go back to my job," Daniel replied. And he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "That may be difficult," Selen admitted. "You have become something of a symbol, the human who defeated a Kelvari champion in 3 seconds. There are already debates in the Council about what this means for humanity's status in the galactic community." Lisa leaned forward with interest, her business instincts overriding her lingering shock. "What kind of debates?" "Some species are calling for restrictions on human expansion, arguing that a species capable of such efficient violence should be contained before they become a threat to the established order," Selen explained. "Others are arguing the opposite, that humanity should be elevated to a higher status precisely because they have proven themselves capable of defending their interests." "And what do you think?" Daniel Askadsillan was quiet for a long moment, the clicking of its mandibles the only sound in the room. "I think the galaxy has made a serious error in judgment," the ambassador finally said. "We looked at humans and saw small, fragile creatures without natural weapons or armor. We saw a species that had only recently discovered faster than light travel. And we assumed that meant you were weak. Many species have made that assumption," Daniel said quietly. "Yes. And I suspect many of them are now reconsidering their positions," Selen agreed. "I have been reviewing the historical records of your world. The wars you have fought, the weapons you have built, the way you have systematically eliminated every species that threatened your dominance on your homeworld." The Valeth paused again. "You do not fight like other species," Selen continued. "You do not display. You do not posture. You do not give warnings. You simply identify threats and eliminate them with maximum efficiency. And that is far more terrifying than anything the Kelvari could ever do." Daniel shrugged with the casual acceptance of a truth he had always known. "We did not evolve to be warriors," he said. "We evolved to be survivors. And sometimes survival means being very good at killing things quickly." Lisa watched this exchange with growing understanding, seeing for the first time the way other species were starting to look at her kind. The fear hiding behind their diplomatic words. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now the galaxy adjusts," Selen answered. "Species that were considering hostile actions against human interests will reconsider. Trade negotiations will become more favorable. and humanity will be treated with a respect that was previously absent. All because of one fight, Lisa said. One fight that revealed a truth we should have seen from the beginning, Selen corrected. Humans are not the soft, harmless creatures we assumed. You are apex predators wearing disguises. And now the disguises slipped after the ambassador left. Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the stars, his reflection ghostly against the darkness of space. You could have killed him, Lisa said. Not a question. Yes. Why did you not? Daniel turned to face her, and there was something old and tired in his eyes. Because that is not who I want to be, he said simply. I have killed people before, when I had to, when there was no other choice. But Rex was not a threat anymore after I cut his arms. Killing him would have been murder, not combat. Some would call that weakness. Some would be wrong, Daniel replied. The ability to kill is not what makes humans dangerous. It is the ability to choose when to kill and when to show mercy. That control is what separates us from simple predators. Lisa nodded slowly, understanding something she had not grasped before a week later. The human trading company received 3 new contract offers from species that had previously refused to deal with them. Each one more generous than anything they had seen before. Daniel returned to his security work as if nothing had happened, standing quietly at Lisa's side during negotiations, fading into the background the way he always had. But now the aliens they dealt with looked at him differently. And sometimes he caught them staring at his hands, trying to imagine how those ordinary-looking fingers had moved so fast, had struck so precisely, had ended a legendary warrior's career in 3 seconds. One afternoon, a young alien dockworker approached him nervously, some species Daniel did not recognize, with large eyes and trembling limbs. Is it true that you come from a Deathworld? The young alien asked. Daniel smiled, and it was a kind expression, not the terrifying thing the arena had witnessed. Earth is not so bad once you get used to it, he said. You just have to watch out for the hurricanes, and the earthquakes, and the venomous animals, and the extreme temperatures, and the diseases, and all the other things that want to kill you. The dockworker went pale and hurried away. Daniel chuckled and went back to his book. Just another unremarkable human doing unremarkable work with the skills to end the galactic champion in 3 seconds, hidden behind a calm smile.